Welcome back to another edition of the AuthorU, Your Guide to Book Publishing podcast. And as always, when I start them off, I like to use kind of a little quote to maybe set the stage. And I think what we're going to have a reveal today has the staging for the key word in this. And tweaking, twisting, transforming. The journey of the creative as your words flow from trickle to a vibrant river. Magical. So, we're going to talk about kind of the magic of creating a book, of launching a book, of creating a series, of having a massive celebration come up to bring together 3 decades of writing and presence that is really intercontinental, from across the pond to Britain to here in the United States, where most of the readers are. So with that said, I always like to thank our sponsors, that NZ Graphics and Nick Zellinger, nzgraphics.com, fabulous book design, cover design, and Rebecca Finkel of fpgd.com. Rebecca is an award-winning author. No, she did write a book, but she took it down in a day because it was for the family. That's what she did. But I can still claim she's an author, but she's a fabulous designer. She's a very creative, makes magic for some of the swag that comes out that we use on our tables and on displays and bookstores and all the like. And we encourage you to support them. With me today is someone who's been with us many times. Mara Purl is back. She has a brand new baby. We're going to talk about the new baby that's birthing, but also she has a massive celebration going on in the location of her mythical town. And how that came about, what's being done to set it up, how do you get people to come in, and all that. So, Mara, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much, Judith. I always love our conversations. We never know
We do have fun,
what's
yeah.
going to reveal.
Who knows where we're going? So, what's the name of the new book? New baby.
The new book is When Hearts Heal.
And that has followed let's give me the sequence.
So
Number 5.
this is a pentology, and this is book 5 of 5. So
Yeah.
it was a really interesting challenge to write this one because so many loose ends had to be tied up. So, and along the way, I had this wonderful meeting with a book club up in the Central Coast, which is where the story is set. And they had read several of the books, but they had a question, which was, how did my character Miranda ever get to the little town of Milford Haven in the first place? And although I knew the answers, I realized I had not written that. So I wrote a prequel. So the prequel is When the Heart Listens. And that starts the journey. Miranda at that point is living in the Bay Area, and she's starting to succeed as a painter, but she's living in the city, and yet she's painting wildlife and landscape. And she realizes this is out of integrity. She's out of sync. So she takes a journey, finds this little town where she can be more authentic to what she's doing with her life. So book 1, when she gets there, what the heart knows, because it was the heart that took her there. Then as she begins to explore that part of the world, it's Where the Heart Lives. And there's a map on that cover. So people can explore with me and with my characters the Central Coast and on south to Los Angeles, which is my home city. Then it turns out a whole lot of secrets have been happening in this town. And so book 3 is Why Hearts Keep Secrets. Then there's a sense of how do you make everything work in your life? And it's alignment. And so Whose Hearts Align is book 4. And then that brings us to When Hearts Heal. There have been some hurts along the way, and some betrayals, and some misunderstandings. And so all these things get sorted in this book.
Well, I think, God, you almost did all the W's. We're just missing. Oh no, you've got them all.
And
The
you know
when,
why?
what, where, why, whose,
Yes, and that when I was looking for titles, I wanted the titles to come right out of the story. There's another very important character who's a journalist. And what questions do journalists ask? Who, what, when, where, why? and that's the 5.
Mm-hmm. And so it's a setup. So Mara, when you started these, of course, I think what we ought to tell people is where this all started from
Yes,
uh, a drama setting on the BBC.
yes.
So let's start there. Okay.
So for those who might be listening who are authors, we always like to throw in a little teaching moment. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when you want to write a book or a series, you have to find something unique. Hopefully something that nobody else has written about. I call it the gap. Look for that gap, something that absolutely intrigues you and really hasn't been discussed by others in their work. Well, that happened to me when I was invited to this little town. Now, I grew up in Tokyo. Then I lived in New York, then Los Angeles. So what did I know about a little town? Nothing. So I got intrigued. Being in this little town, I was invited to do a play there. And so in the evenings, I was busy, and by day, I went exploring. What is life like in a little town? So the more I explored, the more intrigued I became. And I thought, gee, this would be a great structure for a story, an interesting template. So that was it. I wanted to create a fictional town loosely based on the town of Cambria. And so I started doing research. Well, Cambria is a Welsh name. So I looked at the map of Wales, and there I found a town called Milford Haven with no hyphen. I added a hyphen to distinguish it from the really the ancient town of Milford Haven in Wales. And we got started. It went on the air in Cambria, and then it moved to San Luis Obispo. Then I had a few other American markets. And so I was gathering audience, and it was starting to do well.
And the rest is history. All right. So here we go. So now we go through 70 book awards,
Yeah,
honoring Mara is also an author laureate, and with lots of books under her
yes.
belt. So I guess I should ask, so what's going to be next? What do you think? What's next after this series?
You
And
know, Judith,
do you feel relief or like, oh no, they're leaving home?
every time I think I'm finished with this Milford Haven project, it sort of comes back to me in another form. So believe it or not, there are more books planned. What's coming next is I'm skipping ahead 25 years.
Oh,
So
great idea.
we've been
Great
focused.
idea.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's going to be fun. We've been focused in the late 90s, which is when the radio drama was originally placed and where the books are placed. And it's interesting to write such recent history. Many things are the same. And then there are some big significant things that are quite different. And I have to remember that in writing them. For example,
Mhm.
our cell phones are practically a third appendage. We use them for everything. Well, people didn't have cell phones at that time, or very
Mhm.
few people had. And in any
Mhm.
case, they weren't relied on to the same extent. So you might
Mhm.
have to wait at home for a phone call, which isn't part of modern life. So it's going to be interesting to say, all right, 25 years later, so who did they marry? What happened with their careers? What children did they have? Where are they living?
Mhm.
And I've done, at the next level, let's say, of world building, which has been really, really fun. So a lot of that is now in place. And the next grouping of books are going to
Mhm.
start with the word with. So, With the Dreams in Milford Haven will be the next book.
Well, and when do you plan on debuting that?
Um, I think I can get it out next year, but as you know, I do another thing with this series, and that is that I write novellas, and they extend the overall story, and they
Mhm.
are adventure novellas where this character, Miranda, goes off somewhere. So, for example, in May, a new novella came out called When Birds Sing. And in this, you were mentioning the river. Well, Miranda goes to the Columbia River. She's there to paint the state bird of Oregon. But then she hears a bird call. She's been studying bird calls for this job. And then she realizes, oh, that's not a bird. That's somebody screaming.
Oh.
And so she turns out to get involved in a rescue of somebody who has fallen overboard in the river. So it's it's a very exciting, it's a standalone adventure story, but it
Mhm,
is the same protagonist. And so I have a new one that I'm working on now where she goes to Alaska based
mhm.
on just an amazing trip that my husband and I had in Alaska. So all the research is done on that one and some of the writing. And so that needs to appear next year. And then I'm also pursuing this journalist character who has gone missing. And she's sort of spinning off into a trilogy of her own. One of those trilogy books has been published, but there are two more to go. So I'm still going to be busy with Milford Haven.
I get, well, don't knock what brung you.
Yeah,
Someone told me years ago,
yeah.
um, and staying with that, and
Well,
going into it. But
to
that's,
that point, my wonderful friend and mentor, Louis L'Amour, Louis and I had a sort of final conversation before he passed away. He had his wife call me and say, "Louis wants to see you. Please come over." And it was like an oral exam, Judith. He asked me a series of questions. How many hours a day are you writing? What kind of research are you doing? How many
mhm.
characters are you focusing on? All these questions. And then he said, "Now listen, you have found your niche. Don't ever give up. Stick with this." And when it's been tough, that has come back to me many times. And I'm being obedient to my wonderful mentor.
Mhm. Well, I think that literally it's what brought you.
Yes.
You had Louis as this muse moving you along, and staying with it. And the thing is that, California is pretty big. There's a lot of action that can happen up and down that coastline. As someone who also is a beach girl from California.
Yes, exactly. We have that in common.
hmm
Yeah.
I loved my beach life. So
Yes. Yes. That was a very rich chapter. And you wrote about that so beautifully in your memoir.
yeah, and it's just, we all have different things, but it's finding the spot. So now let's take a little leap. So we've visited and then a little bit of going forward, but you've got a lot of things going on with this celebration, that you've got involved. And one of the key components, for those of you who have followed Mara in her books, or have you pick one of them up, or you can see them, you can see, the titles behind us, behind Mara anyway, that there's often a lighthouse in there somewhere.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Major feature, major feature. And so how did you decide on bringing that as one of your key focal points?
The more I spent time in the Central Coast and the more research I did for my
Mhm,
books, I was studying a lot of different things, the particular wildlife, the flora, the fauna, the balance in the Central Coast between development and preservation of natural beauty.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
and lighthouses are present all up and down the California coast, as you know. And I started researching them. Sadly, they almost always come about because of a terrible tragedy. They weren't always built proactively. They were built in response to a ship going aground in an area where they couldn't see the dangerous shoals underwater, boulders, protrusions, very, very strong currents. So I studied the history of all the lighthouses, starting with the Central Coast, where we have Piedras Blancas, and then going down. And I feature one lighthouse in each book. In the paranormal book about Christine, the journalist, she uses those lighthouses as a kind of series of spiritual guideposts as
mhm,
she's trying to figure out what's happened to her and where she is.
mhm.
And I think quietly, I think of them that way myself.
Mm.
They're beautiful physical structures, but they're so symbolic. And I think a lot of people use the sense of the lighthouse as guidance. I mean, there's a joke about a series of communications between a ship's captain and a lighthouse keeper. And the ship's captain says, you're in my way, move, not realizing that it's a lighthouse. The lighthouse keeper says, well,
Exa-
I won't be
exactly. Yeah.
that. So, that sense of stability and a stationary location that provides light, it provides sound, that each lighthouse has a unique sound signature. It also has a unique light signature, the length of the signal and the pulses of the signal. So even if you've lost track of where you are, if you can see or hear that light, it will tell you exactly where you are. So it's, physically important for navigation, but it's also emotionally important, spiritually important.
Hmm. All of the above. Okay. So, and each
Yes.
one, and I think the lighthouses are cool. Of course, in one of I mean, we have a wedding close to the White House, the lighthouse, if I recall correctly.
Yes. As Yeah, in books
It
4 and 5, we've got a whole lot of relationships getting solved.
yeah,
And so we've got weddings and
yes,
beautiful.
yes. So everything's going on. So what is it like? I have to ask you to, it has to be exciting to think, okay, I'm bringing this to a close. And what do I have dangling out here that I have to bring in?
Oh, yes.
Um, what was the process you went through to make sure you got the loose ends tied up?
Well, to go back a little bit, when you create a drama, whether for radio or more often these days it's for television, you have something that's called a show Bible.
Hmm.
And it's a huge document that tracks the details of each character and the events that happen in each episode, so that you don't have a listener say, hey, in the last episode, Samantha's car was green. How come it's blue in this one? You don't want that. You want people to have a sense of the reality of the show that you're creating, of the town that you're creating. And so you want consistency. So I've had for years this searchable document, and I added to it as I began the novels. So that gives me a way to say, now, wait a second, what happened to Sally's, uh, the straw man that was sitting on the stool in her restaurant? Is he still there, or did I get rid of him? I can search for that and make sure. And I'll tell you, if I don't do it, then one of my readers will. And they'll say, you goofed here, and I don't want that. I want them to stay within the story and just enjoy it and not stumble across a mistake that I have made. So I work pretty hard on that. And of course, I have wonderful editors who help me with that. And I ask them, hey, if I have something out of sync here, or I got some needlessly repeating word or whatever it might be, I ask for their help. Because when you've read something yourself 100 times, you reach a point you can't really see it anymore. You need that assistance.
Mm. Well, it is. And, I think it's really cool. How much help do you get? How much assistance? I always love what Ken Follett said. Well, it says in his books, he has his whole research team. He always thanks them all to do all his background work. And then he always has a little ad line. And of course, if I choose to ignore a lot of it and just make up my own. I always got a kick,
Well, there's
and
that. Yes,
I always got a kick out of that.
that
So,
is cute. You know, um, Sue Grafton and I were speaking once at an event, and she told me that I had too many names in my acknowledgments. That was her criticism of my book. I said, well, thank
wow.
you, Sue, but I wouldn't think of not thanking them. So I had an early editor, and she was a developmental editor. And so
Hmm.
what that means is you come across a sentence, and then her name was Vicky. and she'd say, let's talk about that sentence. And then we would go on a deep dive, which might take 3 hours. And it would be about the history, the background of that character, why they had these feelings, what led them to that moment, everything that might be going on for that character. And then we would come back up to the surface, and now we could work on that sentence and know exactly what it was there for and what it meant. Now, you don't have to do that for every book if you're writing a series, because we did such deep work initially on the characters. And I wrote very detailed character descriptions that I still refer to. So she was indispensable, and her help. Now I work with someone who's a professional copy editor. She works on nonfiction and fiction, and a lot of her nonfiction work is environmental. And since my stories have a lot of environmental storylines, it's just excellent, because if I talk about an offshore oil rig, she knows what I'm talking about. If she doesn't know something, she's a great researcher. So her name is Dara, and I love working with Dara. So that's my primary editor now. And then I have beta readers. So before it gets to the point of publication, it's been read a number of times.
Talk about beta readers. I think I get asked this question a lot. Who should they have read? A lot of times people think their beta readers are their editors.
No.
And they rely on what few corrections that they find. And I'm with you. No, they're beta readers. And that could, yeah. So how do you select yours? How many do you have?
I have only a small group. I'd say 5. And the thing about beta readers, first, you want to choose people who do enjoy your genre.
Thank you.
If they're coming from a different genre, they won't understand what you're up to. Sadly, a former publisher of mine submitted one of my books to the wrong reviewer at a big, review outfit. And this was somebody, he hated women's fiction. He just lambasted, but most of what he had to say wasn't.
It's a killer. It's a killer.
It's a killer. It wasn't about my book. It was about the genre. So you have to be careful there. And why would you want to subject a reader who doesn't enjoy your genre? So you want to ask people who just love to read, in my case, women's fiction, and know it well, have read extensively in that genre, have read other authors who may be way ahead of me, have been mega bestsellers for years. So they know what they're looking for. And if I strike the wrong note, if something is sour, if something is missed, a moment is missed, like, wait, that happened too fast. What happened to the reflection on that moment? Those are the kinds of things that belong in women's fiction. And I take it so kindly when I get comments from these early readers. It means a lot. It means, they're keeping me on track.
And that's what you want. Well, I'm glad you said handful of beta readers. So 5 in your area. I'm so glad you referred back that they better get your genre or be buyers of your genre.
Yes.
Better yet, I think I like them to say that they're buyers of your genre, because the input they give is invaluable to me. When you get someone who is out of the loop, they can actually totally deflate your bubble of where you're going, totally knock you down.
They can knock you down, and they can knock you off course.
Yes.
If you like, if I get a thriller reader, and he or she may complain that my pacing is off in my book, and I didn't plant enough clues and so forth. Well, that's not what I'm supposed to do in women's fiction. And so you don't want to like, oh dear, take the wrong advice.
And so that's just what's so important on all of this,
Yeah.
um, on that and going that. All
You
right,
want to
so
go through
let's.
all that process before you submit for professional reviews.
Mhm. All right, so I had an interesting discussion. This is really a good question for you. In talking to one of the authors that I'm working with in California, who would like to get her books in libraries. And she is saying basically it is a mandate in order to have your book in a library to buy one single copy, that you have to have professional reviews. That doesn't make sense to me. And professional reviews means Publishers Weekly. It means Library Journal. It could be Clarion, it could be Kirkus, those kind. They said they just won't carry any book. And I said, this just doesn't ring true to me on that. There's lots of reviews. I mean, if you can't tell me that if your book was reviewed in USA Today, that wouldn't be professional, that you could take a blurb from. Have you, am I totally off base here, Mara? Have you
Well,
heard about any of this?
I think it's a sadness. You and I both love libraries, do anything we
Yeah,
can to support libraries.
yeah, yeah.
They're very important. But I also think librarians who probably are seriously overworked these days,
Yes.
in my opinion, need to keep up a bit better with what's actually happening in the workplace. They are,
Yeah.
they're
Yes.
right that initially there were two camps. There was the traditional publishers in New York, and both you and I have worked with them. And
Mhm.
then there was something new called self. Well, self-publishing when it started was you take your
Ooh,
manuscript down the road to Kinko and you get 100 copies. Well, that's not being properly published. And so libraries, bookstores had a line in the sand to say, sorry, those books
right.
are not
Right.
acceptable
Or,
for
or
us to
or they
present
went
to the public.
right, or they went the next step up above, went down to Kinko's. Both of us remember Kinko's,
Oh, yes.
FedEx, yeah. That you would go to something like an author house, author solutions
Yeah.
type thing, which and paid $397. And it's slapped and put together. And the line was drawn, which it should
Yeah.
have been.
And it should have been. But what's happened in the meanwhile is this fantastic thing called independent publishing, which some people call it hybrid publishing, and it is the best of both because you have a professional team. You have someone like Nick Zellinger or Rebecca Finkel doing your book design. I mean, I would put their books up against anything coming out of a New York house. And you
Absolutely.
have professional editors. It's a professional team. It's not you wearing a bunch of hats, pretending you know what you're doing with book design and editing.
Right,
You
at your
get to
kitchen
be the
table.
author. Yeah, no, you get to be the author and you work with this fantastic team.
Mhm.
So in the world of authoring and publishing, this is what has grown up. It's very much analogous to independent film, and there are some fantastic independent films. Um, and in the area of reviewing companies, the same thing has happened. So now you have Literary Titan, Maincrest Media, Elite Reviews. You have some professional review organizations that do in-depth and very good reviews. And you take your
Oh,
chances as you do
absolutely.
with any professional
Yeah, there's no
reviewer.
guarantee it's going to be good, people.
That's
Just understand this. There's no guarantee.
right. Exactly.
But I know I just had, I thought, I mean, I send the historical fiction to Literary Titan, and I thought, I have this little cookbook. I think I'm just going to send it for the heck of it, see if they would do it. They actually had a category. The review I got back, Mara, was so broken out and detailed in sections. They had five key components that they were looking at, which
Wow.
was very interesting that
Yeah.
they sent that along with the review. But the fun part is that the reviewer said, now that I'm done with this little gem of the book, I'm just plain hungry.
That's great.
And I loved that. I loved it.
Oh,
So,
super.
so all of you, if you don't know about Main Crest Media, if you don't know about Literary Titan, here's what I think it's one of the huge wonders for the author world, that when you submit, the cost of you getting a review will vary from $65 maybe up to 120. But here's the secret sauce. If you get a 4 or 5 star review with Literary Titan, they automatically enter it into book award competition with no additional funds. That is amazingly cool. And that's it's a gift. If you really score a really great review, they will put it into their awards. And Mara and I have both experienced a surprise, a silver or gold. It's really very fun.
Oh, it is. And there's one other terrific one called Book Excellence. They do very good reviews too. So they're serious. They read in depth and detail. They've got a great team, obviously, of reviewers. And Midwest Book Review is, a
Oh, Midwest is
stellar,
great.
yeah,
And
it's
it's free, everybody. James Cox, Midwest Book Reviews, fabulous.
yes, fantastic.
Yeah.
So librarians, if they're not aware of these, honestly, these are as good as Kirkus and Publishers Weekly. And
Then a lot less money.
yeah, and I'm very pleased that I have some nice reviews from Publishers Weekly and Kirkus, but I'm just as thrilled with the reviewers that you and I have just mentioned. It's the
Hmm.
world has evolved, and I think, we have to keep up with it.
It's just really important. So take advantage of these little tips. Okay, Mara, I wanna fly up the coast. You have a big event coming.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say if you're in California or plan on being in California in the Central Coast area, that around Morro Bay, San Luis Obispo, Hearst Castle, think in that kind of area. Um, that how about going to a party? Awesome. Let's talk about it.
Well, this is going to be the party of a lifetime. It is a celebration of everything Milford Haven. So we are going to tell stories. We're going to have, people sitting on little stools by a mic and share different chapters of this evolution of this story. So we'll start with the original radio drama, which first aired in Cambria. There are some cast members from that original show who will be at the party, and I can hardly wait to see them again and hear what they remember. We used to record in KOTR, a little local radio station, and engineer Bill, my wonderful engineer with whom I still work, would go in and usually have to fix a couple of things in the radio station to get things to work properly. But he was very, very good at doing that. So we had the original radio show. Then, I went to the NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters, and took a booth. I thought, I'd like to syndicate this show. Well, this is where magic happened because two people were there from the BBC and they said, call this number. Pat Ewing, the producer with BBC Radio 5, has been trying to find you. I called her and ended up getting the first contract ever offered to an American radio serial for the BBC. Well, we were celebrating, you can imagine. But we also were pretty nervous because we were now going to be up against some of the best radio drama in the English language in the world. So we were crossing our fingers and waiting to hear how the show went. About 6 weeks in, Pat Ewing, our producer in London, called and she said, you might like to pop over. It's doing rather well. And I said, what is rather well? And she said, 4.5 million listeners.
I
Whoa,
I love I love the popover.
pop over. Yes.
Okay.
So I did a press tour in London and while I was there, I got an invitation from the original town of Milford Haven. So I
Very
took
cool.
the train to the Land's End in Wales. I was met at the train. I was escorted. They gave me a reception in town hall. They
Hmm.
gave me a parade, an absolutely astonishing experience. So I
Great.
still love them dearly. In fact, 2 years ago, I went back and launched a literacy project with local schools. So I'm
Hmm.
still in touch with Milford Haven, Wales. So we got a lot of great press in London, and then that drew the attention of publishers. So that's how the publishing journey first started. So at the party, we're going to share some of these stories. And some of them, it's synchronicity, or it's that you happen to return the phone call, you happen to be standing in the right place at the right time, or for example, I needed a Native American actor to play a certain part. And I called a friend who said, I'm putting you on hold because on the other line, I have my client who's a Native American actor who just asked me, could you get me a job on a radio show? Literally. That's Michael Horse. He was doing Twin Peaks at the time. So the story is full of these kinds of synchronicities. So we're
Mm-hmm.
going to share those stories, and then we'll shift into the publishing aspect. And oh gosh, Judith, when I was first trying to figure out how to publish, uh, I had so much to learn, right? And
Yeah.
so there are some funny missteps. Somebody saying, I went to her printer and she said, well, it's pretty good considering you don't know what the hell you're doing. And she said, the gutter isn't right and the leading isn't right. And I said, what's the gutter? What's the leading? I mean, I didn't know any of that. So I had this wonderful journey of learning, really grassroots. And I'm so pleased that I did, because if it had come through, a big New York contract and they took it over, I wouldn't have learned any of that. And so then we're going to have artists who have worked on the art for my book covers, um, editors, and some people who can't come in person will come by Zoom.
Zoom.
And some people are sending little 3-minute videos to share their favorite story. And while we're celebrating, there's a company that does charcuterie boards that look like paintings. And so
Oh,
we're going to
fun.
have
How
this fabulous,
fabulous.
right? And then the
Are you
Central
are you are
Coast
you
is
doing
full of
are you doing your board like one of your book covers? Or what are we gonna do?
ooh.
What do you think?
Well, I leave that to the charcuterie artist. But they have shown us oh gosh, they use flowers, they use plants, they use leaves, then they use all these cheeses, and it's going to be very special. And then the Central Coast is full of beautiful wineries. And so we'll have some wines, some non-alcoholic wines, and some lovely offerings. And I haven't mentioned it'll be on a lighthouse property. There's only one lighthouse in the Central Coast that has a separate building that we were able to rent to host our party. And
Oh,
it's
nice.
next to this beautiful historic, I think it's a 130-year-old lighthouse with a view that is of this gorgeous bay. It's going to be
Hmm.
spectacular. We'll be there as the sun sets. So it's Point San Luis Lighthouse in
Hmm.
Avila. And Avila is, as you said, it's in that region between San Luis Obispo on the way to Morro Bay, Cayucas, Cambria, San Simeon, where the Hearst Castle is. There's so much to
Hmm.
do. We actually have a schedule for people for the whole weekend. And so, for example, I'm going to take people to breakfast in the restaurant that was the prototype for Sally's restaurant in the series. And
Hmm. How far? How far are you from Calistoga?
I actually don't know.
I think it's Calistoga. Maybe I'm back in the wine country. I'm trying to think where the garlic festival is.
Oh, yes.
But this could be in time for that.
It's a little farther to the Garlic Festival, but that is super fun. And all the wineries have like autumn tastings and beautiful dinners. There's also a scarecrow festival all through Cambria and San Simeon,
Hmm?
where favorite characters show up as straw people. Some of them look so
Hmm.
realistic that you want to go over and have a chat.
Right. Well, I do know that San Juan Capistrano. See, I've forgotten my coastline totally. Which is southern, which was
Okay, so I
northern,
think
which is
it's
central.
Gilmore is where the Garlic Festival is, I'm pretty sure.
Gilmore, Gilroy. It's Gilroy.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's
Um,
Gilroy.
San Luis Obispo is way south. It's
Okay.
on the way to San Diego.
So I was just trying to think that would be if anyone is out there, the Garlic Festival is a trip of its own.
It's very fun.
Um,
The
and when I
Central
lived in,
Coast,
yeah, I lived in the Bay Area for over 20 years.
yes.
So going
So,
over there and I have my former in-laws are all in Cayugas, which abuts it. And my former brother-in-law was the attorney for all the Hearst castles. So we were down, in that area a lot.
yes, yes.
I know.
The Hearst
S-
Castle is fascinating, and it was built by Julia Morgan, who was the first woman to be licensed as an architect in California. And a wonderful journalist in the Bay Area wrote a play about her, and I got invited to star in the play called Becoming Julia Morgan. And we've done the performance a few times up and down the Central Coast.
Okay, so I have to tell you one, I spoke too soon about the Garlic Festival. It was in July. So for those of you who go to the West Coast, in that central kind of area, really just below northern, you might want to keep the Gilroy Festival because it really is something worth participating in.
It's
Just my
very
two
fun.
bits,
Yeah.
for someone who likes garlic, yeah, and cooks with a lot of garlic. So,
Well, the Central Coast begins in Ventura and then goes north to through Oxnard and then Santa Barbara and then San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay, Cayucas,
mhm,
Cambria, San Simeon, and up to Monterey.
yeah.
And
So
sure.
it's a trip. So this sounds like what a wonderful celebration. um Going on and the days and or from the Beach Boys and how you use them and you weave them through all your books to real locations that have come across and people how and do the townspeople know this coming? What's going on in the town?
Oh, I belong to the Cambria Chamber of Commerce, just a
Hmm.
wonderful organization. I've been supporting businesses in Cambria for decades. So they are coming. The director and board members of the chamber are coming. There's a
Hmm.
wonderful local journalist, Kathy Tanner, who's been writing about the region forever, knows everything. And Kathy will be joining us. Several business owners, some of
Hmm.
whom were my original sponsors for the original radio drama. So I do have a lot of wonderful connections in the region.
Hmm. Oh, some of the original stoners. They had to be. That's how it all started in
Well,
California.
okay, if we're going to tell that story. All right, so I'm in Cambria performing in this play, beautiful play called Sea Marks. And the owner of Chaoter comes backstage and says, if you ever want to do something on the radio, let me know. So I go to the station the next day. His wife has a little pot of coffee on, and there are cute little curtains in the windows. It's a darling converted little cottage. And I say, great. So I go back to Los Angeles. I write scripts. I send them to Wally Wallenbrock, who's the owner of the station, but I don't get a response. I call, the phone number has been changed. Uh-oh. Well, I figure I better drive. So it's 4 hours. I drive up to Cambria and I go into the station. Now things have changed. This is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
No more pot of coffee. No more
Oh,
cute curtains in the windows.
oh no.
Three guys in beards behind a desk in a cloud of marijuana smoke. And I say, is Wally here? No, he sold the station. Oh, well, I've been sending scripts, Milford Haven. Oh, yeah, we've been throwing those away. Oh, I said, well, what if I have sponsors? And they went, sponsors? So I said, do you have a rate card? So I walk up and down Main Street and I go into all these businesses and they know me from the play and they also know me from television because I'm on Days of Our Lives. And I say, I'm going to do a radio drama. Would you like to support it? Yes, we would love to support that. So Judith, I come back to the station with a bunch of money. And so these guys are like, you're on the air. I said, oh, okay, when? Well, when can you start? Well, gosh, we haven't recorded anything yet. Race back to Los Angeles, find a radio, a studio where we can record. I can script a bunch of actor pals and we start recording. So that's how it started. But because of that local support, it was a hit right away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that value of really grassroots. I've never seen this as some sort of a solo project. It's always been a team project. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why the celebration is going to be so much fun because I see all of us as, part of the Milford Haven team, including you.
So are any of the old the marijuana folks around?
Uh, I
Did you
have
connect?
I have stayed in touch with a couple of them. That radio station has, transformed into something else.
Mm-hmm.
But really, they were good broadcasters, serious
Mm-hmm.
broadcasters, and they've had good careers.
Mm-hmm. And what year was this, Mara? That all happened? What era
Uh,
was that?
Started in 87,
In 87.
1987. And then
Okay.
in the BBC, we were on in the early 90s,
In the 90s. And when did you start the radio in that little town?
right before that.
Right before that.
Yeah, late
Well,
80s.
there you go. I think what's really important, everyone, is to understand that if you think that success happens overnight, you're nuts. Can it? Yeah, it can. Is it the norm? No, it's not. It's a series of steps, a series of happenings, series of sometimes mishappenings and missteps that
True.
accumulate and come together to bring it. And I think that's what's really important to understand as Mara's gone through her journey of
I like to say that after 30 years, I'm an overnight success.
exactly, that's exactly right. After
Yeah.
30 years. I remember someone saying that to me, Mara, when I was in People magazine on one of my books. I had a 4-page spread, and someone said, well, you're finally an overnight success. I'm going, really? Really? On
But
that.
we love this journey. It has brought us the insight, the wisdom, the joy, the awareness that we have.
And and neither you or I see any closure to it. I think
Oh
we just
no,
keep going. And
keep
I
going.
think for all of you who are authors or aspiring authors out here, that there is no expiration date for you. Look at the number of people who just start writing in their 50s and 60s, just start the
That's
journey.
right. You're never too young. You're never too old.
Yeah, and so that's the huge plus in this, that you can just keep it going, which is what I truly love in that process. You can just keep it going for as long as you really want it. And then and here you have a whole new series started. You've already got your
Yes.
backstory put together. It's connected, so
Hmm.
it's not that you have to start from scratch,
No, but
but
there's something fresh about it.
which is really important. you
Yeah.
know, and so now Mara is entering the saga field because now we have generational things truly happening to find out, what's going to happen to Miranda and her husband. And does Miranda have children? We don't know.
We
What's
will find
happening? What
out.
happens to her sister? Well, is her mother still around? Is she still planning the grand events that she always did? Is Sally still there? What happened to Sally's baby? I mean, let me tell you, you got a lot to figure out
That's right.
in this process. All right, so Mara, how do people find out about this event? Where would they go? And let's talk about your website is marapurl.com, correct?
AuthorU-Your.
Mhm.
And in the calendar on my website, there will be information about how to get to this lighthouse.
Mhm.
But I can also just tell you that it's October 18th. We're going to gather at 3 p.m. This lighthouse has a special parking lot where you get on board a van, which drives you up the windy, beautiful road up to the lighthouse property.
Ooh.
And so if you need information, just email me, Mara Purl at live.com, and I will send you links and programs and all the information you need.
So is this a free event? Do we need to pay anything? How
It's
do
free.
we go?
No,
Oh, right.
we are covering all the costs.
How cool is that? So are you going to have any of your books available for people to get?
Yes,
They will
definitely.
be,
We'll
right?
have books there. Yep.
Yep. So let me just say, if you already own some of Mara's books and they haven't been personalized, bring them. But she's prolific and it's the novella adventure series. Some of them are very fun. I had one of my friends tell me, I love the otter one. I love the book about otters. And her bird one is the most recent one, but there's lots of little goodies in between, which is very, very cool, I think.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have that. All right. So Mara, I want to thank you for being with me. This has been a fun hour to go on.
Delightful as always. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. So thanks. And this will be we I wanted to do something to support Mara. She's been a friend of mine for a gazillion years. And read her book. I remember when I read the first book, I said, "So what happened to Christine?" Okay, tell me. She said, "She's sad. You'll just have to find out in the next book."
Sorry about that. That's what Louis taught me to do. You can blame it on him.
Little more. All right. So with that, all right, everyone, have a great day. We'll be with you again. And that I wish I could be there in person. I have things that
Me
prevent me from
too.
doing traveling now. But I will be there in spirit for sure.
Wonderful. Thank
So
you
the
so
day
much.
again, Mara, let's go through the day again. The real day this is happening, or the weekend this happens, is when?
October 18th. That's a Saturday.
Hmm.
And we'll have some nice events on the Sunday in the area.
Hmm. So the event and then post 19th, there's lots of events that you can participate in. So why don't make a long weekend? It's the Bay Area. It's always nice in October, I have to tell you. And then we can keep that going. So, Mara, I've got a couple of minutes. Is there we talked about your journey. Um, if you had an inspiring author, and what lessons learned? What tips would you leave them? What do you wish you knew 30 years ago when you started on this journey?
You know, the slogan on my website is the journey from head to heart. And that really describes my own journey too. I believe that we've got to use our heads, our smarts, our intellect to create a career as authors for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you won't be able to sustain it unless your heart is in it. So choose a topic, choose something that really intrigues you, that you won't get tired of. That's what's happened to me. I'm rather than being tired of these issues in Milford Haven, I'm increasingly intrigued by them. The more I've delved in, I've become a better writer. I continue to learn. That's what you want your journey to be. And if that's your journey, that's going to be your readers' journeys too.
Right, and you know, I'm going to echo. Mara and I just came out. We both were on the board of the Colorado Authors Hall of Fame, and we just came out from our big every other year gala. And our closing speaker was inductee into the hall was really the current fantasy phenom Rebecca Yarros. And her advice to all of you was simply this: read, read, read. The more you read, the better you write. And the more you write, the better you become with your storytelling and all that. And with that, I think we'll leave you, but just chew on those things a little bit. I hope that some of you can get out to the West Coast and enjoy all the festivities Mara has planned. Mara,
And join
again,
us
can you
by
keep?
Zoom if you can't come in person.
All right, so how do we find the Zoom link?
I will send you the link.
I need that link. Okay. In
Yep.
fact, I do need the link. Okay, great.
Yes, I
All
will
right,
send. All
everyone,
right.
take care.
Thank
Have a great
you.
week. We'll see you next week.